У Тиена мы в прошлый раз, когда
the early stage. And last time when we had Tien here, he has a very broad experience of work with startups in every development stage in very diverse industries. So, Tien.
Thanks for having me.
I'm doing
really
good.
Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure seeing you again. It's our last day. We're all a little bit tired, but still very excited.
Well, that's great. It's a great program you guys are doing, and really happy to be part of it. So thank you for having me, and hope I can add value to your attendees. And yeah, I mean, I think it's wonderful what you guys are doing. So again, thanks.
Thank you, Tien. Our dear organizers, can we please see our questionnaire, наш опросник? Опросник на экраны, пожалуйста, второй. We're gonna ask our participants a questionnaire again. It's about making a pivot. And we have a few options, and we're gonna get back to them after your talk. Our participants are seeing the questionnaire right now and the poll on their screens. So I would just like to give it to you and dive into your knowledge.
Great. Can I go ahead and share screen then?
Of course.
Okay, so we will talk a little bit about pivots for sure. If you guys can see my screen, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. How's that look? Good?
Yes, all wonderful.
Okay, so I know, thank you for the introduction regarding me. I want to advance my screen here. There we go, sorry. So I won't spend a whole lot of time on me, but because I want to spend it on answering some of the questions you guys might have. But my company is an investment firm. So we invest in companies and we also consult. We raise money for funds, so alternative investment fund managers, including VC funds and private equity funds, as well as for companies that are looking to raise money. So we have a network of over 2,000 high net worth individuals and family offices. And that's what we do that's our day job. And I'll talk about our fund activities in a second. I do want to make you aware of one very good event, which is on October 29th. That is our CONNECTpreneur forum. This is something that Opus8 does. We do this and we bring together investors and entrepreneurs. We usually have around 180 or so investors and a couple other 100 more entrepreneurs and service providers. That will be on October 29th. There's the website. Tomorrow morning for you biotech guys, we have a biotech investor conference at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, which is in the evening in Russia, probably. It's definitely evening in Asia. We have a lot of participants from Asia and US. We have, I think, 760 people registered already. It's a 4-hour conference. We'll have a lot of biotech investors, and also we will have we have 4 keynote speakers, 2 panels, and 10 presenting companies. As far as my company, the investments that we're doing, this is our website, opus8phoenix.com. We are basically investing in 3 main vertical markets: financial technology, fintech, marketing tech, and CRM, and health tech. Now we will do some cyber because we have advisors, and we're in an ecosystem in Washington, DC, which has tremendous, it's a very, very deep ecosystem for cybersecurity. So we do have that ability to do stuff. We're only investing in the United States. And as a follow-on investor, as a co-investor, we're not a lead investor. So we will look at all different ranges of the life cycle. We'll do pre-A round, A round. We might even do B and C rounds, depending, because our job as a fund is to provide the best returns for our investors. So sometimes if we have an amazing deal that's going to go public soon and we have an opportunity to invest and add value to the company, then we would give it a hard look. Generally, our check sizes are $250,000 to $1 million. More than most. We're probably in the 700 to $1 million range for the most part. We also reserve an equivalent amount for follow-on investments later. So not every one of our initial investments will require a follow-on investment, but many do. So we do reserve that. And then our goal is to partner with some of the better VCs around the country, around the US, and be brought into the deals because we have an ability to add value, whether it's through market expertise or through opening up channels, bringing customers, bringing other investors, bringing talent. That's why they would let us in, because of our domain expertise in those vertical markets. And our focus is on founders and their teams. So we're looking for resilient founders, people that have an amazing capacity to get knocked down and get back up, get knocked down, get back up, and to love doing that. And also, and part of that is, the topic is pivots. In order to do pivots, you have to be resilient. You have to be able to bounce back from defeat all the time. And half of our capital is being allocated to underserved entrepreneurs, so women, minorities, and immigrants. And the research has shown that those underserved segments of the entrepreneurial ecosystem tend to outperform. So that's a good thing for us, assuming we can find good deals. My background, I am not going to bore you with this, but basically I'm an entrepreneur. I started many companies. The fifth bullet is a company that I founded in the early 90s and grew it to 80 million in revenue. I sold it to a public company. I raised private equity, 3 rounds of capital. We had 2,300 employees, and we were serving some of the biggest and best brands in the world, actually. So I sold the company to a publicly traded Fortune 500 company. And basically after that, I became a full-time investor, and here I am. So let me go to the next slide. So entrepreneurship in 2020, I think many of you have heard me talk the last few days, so or in the past. So this could be repetitive, but I do want to talk about ecosystems. You have great ecosystems around the world, right? You have Silicon Valley, you have New York City, you have Beijing, you have different areas around the world. And what makes a great entrepreneurial ecosystem, what makes Silicon Valley special, I think can be summed up in these 5 purple bullets. So the availability of capital, whether it's angel money, whether it's friends and family capital, whether it's recycled entrepreneurs, or whether it's institutional VC or institutional growth equity firms, having that money there makes all the difference in the world, because that is the gasoline that goes into the tank that allows you to go on your journey. Having talent is another important thing that ecosystems have. They have a deep pool of talent at all levels: managerial, technical, administrative, sales, whatever. And it's because generally they have attracted some large companies, and also because they have been there a long time. Culture is very important for an ecosystem. And when I'm talking about culture, I'm talking about sort of the mentality of the region, of the people in that ecosystem, not just the politicians, not just the academics, not just the entrepreneurs. For example, in Silicon Valley, they have a culture of openness, collaboration, and nothing is impossible. Now, if you have a culture of nothing is impossible, it's amazing, right? They are so open, and so they're open to the point where they would invest in an 18-year-old college kid named Mark Zuckerberg. I don't see that happening in other ecosystems, and it's for that reason that this whole mentality about no limits and unlimited potential is what makes Silicon Valley great. And they're open. They are not a closed, walled garden society. They are open to new ideas. They're open to new people. There tends to be less discrimination, more collaboration. So a lot of these things are very, they're all kind of in one big nexus of culture. But when you have that, it pervades into everything: people, schools, the politicians, political infrastructure. So I think that you need all those elements to be truly great. And obviously they have the top schools, they have Caltech, they have Stanford, they have Santa Clara, many, great institutions. And because of all this, the rich get richer. In other words, they're already successful. They're going to become more successful because they're attracting the top companies, the top talent, the top venture capitalists, and success kind of breeds more success. In terms of, what you can do today, right, with respect to 2020, we have a lot of weird stuff going on politically, economically, et cetera. And the best entrepreneurs are looking for opportunities no matter what, whether times are good or times are bad or times are so-so. The best entrepreneurs are always looking for opportunities. So tune in and look for those opportunities. And I think in a recession or in some kind of times of distress, it's a very good time to start businesses because there's a lot of dislocation. There's dislocation of business models and dislocation of economies, sub-economies. And that's where the opportunity lies. As things change, entrepreneurs go in and fix things and make them better, and they can move quicker than the big companies. So I do think if you have a good idea, good concept, then go for it. And, Warren Buffett and Rockefeller and Bezos, they all believe in the contrarian approach. So Amazon was founded in a recession. And John D. Rockefeller, said the best time to invest is when there's blood in the streets. And Warren Buffett has the same mentality. And there's a reason for that. It's because there's always a flight to quality. And during times of a recession, that's when you have a chance to show your quality. With the impact of the pandemic, I think you're seeing the acceleration of trends that are already in place. Everything is going digital, everything's going touchless, everything's going virtual. And for those entrepreneurs who can support that, the world is your oyster at this moment. So you're also seeing in the second bullet, the acceleration of the demise of old business models and old ways of thinking, old paradigms. They're being thrown out the window now. So, basically what COVID did was accelerate what already is going on. And again, with this kind of dislocation, it's great for entrepreneurs like us because we can find opportunities. Yes, there's going to be a hell of a lot of damage, carnage all over the place, lots of unemployment, lots of pain, and that sucks. But as an entrepreneur, I'm looking to make the world better, and so are you guys. We will be able to fill in the gaps where these needs are and do our thing. And then hopefully there's thousands or millions of people like us doing these things, and eventually it lifts everything. I think the pandemic is also giving us entrepreneurs and business owners one of the greatest opportunities in our lifetimes to hire great talent. So that is a real silver lining in the cloud. We have the ability to find people who are either disenchanted or not happy about what's going on in their current situation, or they've been laid off or furloughed, and we can bring them on board. And we don't have this talent war the way we did even last year, 2 years ago. I think, finding great people was a true barrier to growth for companies. Now, with what's happening, globally and in the macro economy, it allows us to hire great talent, not just in our geography, but anywhere in the world, given Zoom and things like this. Talking about pivots, COVID is forcing companies to pivot, forcing them to experiment, change, adapt. The survival, if you look at Charles Darwin, his Origin of Species, this is the same thing for companies. Companies are basically just like, animals in a way, and the most adaptable win. If you don't adapt, then eventually you will become extinct. So, I really do believe that while every company should always be looking at pivots and opportunities, what this is forcing companies to do. For example, food services companies, restaurants. There's a great company here in the DC region called Hungry. They lost 80-90% of their revenue immediately They're basically a marketplace for local chefs to do awesome meals, catering meals for corporate clients. They pivoted into 3 new business opportunities, and now their revenues are as high as they've ever been. And this is a company that's used to be in the food services business. They're still in the food services business, but they have pivoted into other opportunities. For example, now they do business to consumer. They do some home delivery work. They have set up a platform that they can also now use to sell to other groups. So that's just one example of a very savvy entrepreneur who was able to turn lemon into lemonades, basically. Take a situation that was horrible, and instead of crying and moping about it or going out of business, he decided to experiment. He started 3 new pivots within the one company, and now they're really thriving. We're seeing great technology, biotechnology, and healthcare innovation. We're seeing also, because we have a united against this common enemy, we're seeing countries and educational institutions and research scientists collaborate in a way that's never been done before. This is probably in the whole history of humanity. We are now witnessing unprecedented collaboration among the smartest minds in the world to solve a common problem. And this is great, because what's going to happen after COVID is this kind of paradigm that they're setting up for solving the COVID crisis is going to be applicable to solving AIDS and cancer and all these other problems. I'm pretty sure of that. So COVID does have some, it's forcing people to put aside personal and institutional silos and work together for a greater good. And then the last bullet is more for you entrepreneurs, right? To the great Canadian American hockey player Wayne Gretzky. When asked, how does he score so many goals and how is he so successful? He says, I skate to where the puck is. I don't skate to where the puck. I'm sorry, I skate to where the puck is going. I don't skate to where the puck is now. So if you look for where the puck is going, that's what we're talking about. Where is the dislocation? What can you do that you do better and different than anyone else, whether it's some kind of knowledge that you have or a technology or a solution set? What is your unique and competitive advantage that you can bring to solve these dislocated problems, these dislocations? That's sort of the nexus of where you can build a business. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that, but from a high level, I think that's one great way to look at how you can be successful. Silicon Valley, we talked about. I don't want to spend too much time here. I think, the last 2 bullets here, we didn't talk about, which is that there's role models. That helps. We talked about the rich getting richer. Detroit is an auto town because there were a lot of role models for auto. LA is an entertainment town because there's a lot of role models for successful entertainers and the industry. Silicon Valley, it just happens to be an industry. Their industry is innovation, and they innovate as well as anyone in the world. And look at the companies that are there. You have and look at how old these companies are. HP was there in the 50s and 60s. Then Intel, Apple, Cisco, not just hardware companies, but also companies that don't produce hardware, like Google, Facebook, Oracle. So when you have this kind of ecosystem with these mega companies all in one place, it just contributes to success. And they also have this whole deep bench of accelerators and incubators and service providers, and everybody's set up to support entrepreneurs. So talking about raising money a little bit, I know that you guys are probably curious about this because you're building businesses and you need capital. So my thoughts on this are to find a partner, not just a money person. So what does that mean? That means, well, most of us on this call have a partner in life, right? Whether it's a spouse or a significant other. And that's how I would say is a great analogy for how you should look at this quest for money. You want to have someone who has the deep pockets, for sure. They have the ability to do subsequent rounds. They have the ability to support you during hard times. They understand your space. So they're not just coming in with a check, and they don't understand your space, and they can't really add any value. They have a good track record of success as an investor and as a business person. But you want to take money from a successful investor because they know how to win, and you can learn from that, and your chances of success are much higher. And then operations expertise is critical, because as you grow and as you scale, one of the big problems is on the delivery side. How do you get your product shipped on time? How do you get the bugs out? How do you get traction? And having an investor who can help you with this is critical. So I view it as looking for a financial partner as opposed to just a straight up investor. And a lot of the savvy angels or super angels or venture capital firms are like this. They have the deep pockets. They know, they have domain expertise. They've got a great track record. They can attract other great investors to co-invest with them. And they have operations expertise either through the partners themselves or through operating partners. So just like you're looking for a significant other or a spouse, you want to make sure that you vet the partner carefully. So I would say, and it's hard to do because you get term sheets from different people. You want to jump at the first opportunity. You're desperate to raise money, because if you don't raise money, you can't make payroll, or you can't deliver your product, or God knows what, right? So you do need the money. So you have to balance, the desperation of wanting to raise the money with the absolute requirement that you have to raise money from a partner. Because if you raise money from someone who's not going to be collaborative with you in the future, you're just delaying the inevitable, which will be an ugly divorce. So that's something that and it's hard. I know it's hard to sort of control the desire to take the money from whoever, but you have to, because this is your future we're talking about. Raising more money than you need, but not too much. So every entrepreneur I know usually underestimates the amount they need. So what I tell them is, think about how much you need and double it. So I tell them actually more. I say, make a conservative estimate of how much you need, and then double it. So if someone thinks they need 600,000 to do something, or to get to the next milestone in their growth, conservatively they need $1 million, and I'll tell them you need 2 million, because everything takes longer than they think and costs more than they think, and timetables are never met. So with all of that, there's tons of costs involved. So my advice is always raise more than you need, because you also don't want to spend your whole life raising money. So you raise money this month and then you're running out of cash in 3 months or 6 months, and because raising money is a full-time job. So when are you going to have time to build your business, talk to your customers, right? Build your team. You have to run a business too. And investors, let's be clear here. I mean, investors want to invest in huge markets with great teams, with differentiation. Differentiation goes back to my last bullet on the COVID slide, which is, what is your special sauce? What do you do differently or better than anyone else? And it's up to you to convince the investors that you have the team to execute on that. Because an investor is thinking, if I have a special product in a huge market and a good team to execute, this is a good investment for me. So think in terms of that. We'll talk a little bit about exit considerations later, but I'm a big fan of putting myself in the shoes of the person I'm trying to influence. So if I'm trying to get an investor to invest in me, I have to think, what do they want? What do they want? What's important to them, and how can I give it to them? And then with respect to the next bullet, venture capitalists are the investors of last resort. Try to get your money anywhere else first. Mortgage your house, borrow money from friends and family, get investors from friends and family. But the VCs are the last resort investors, because they have patience. And if you miss your targets for a few times, they'll fire you. And if you don't believe me, just do the research and look at any VC and look at their portfolio of companies and see if the original founder is still in that job. And you'll find that at least half of the companies, the original founder is no longer the CEO. So basically, when you take VC money, I tell entrepreneurs this all the time, when you take VC money, you have a 50-50 shot of getting fired. So, basically, You're making a deal with the devil, quote unquote. So be very, very confident and sure that you're going to succeed. And then the last piece on raising money, because I know how hard it is that you have to be persistent. You have to have thick skin. You have to not get discouraged. When an investor says no, this is my advice to entrepreneurs. When an investor says no, take the meeting with the investor and find out why. Because they do this for a living and they're smart. So if you can get advice from a smart, seasoned person, even if they're not investing, that's free advice. You don't have to take it, but at least it's data points that you can apply to your decision calculus. So always, try to meet with smart people, even when they're not ready for you. And they'll track you. And if you show some success, maybe they'll come in later. But there's a lot of money in the marketplace, and not a lot of deals have gotten done. In the first six months of this year, not a lot of. Secondly, the second quarter was dead, and the third quarter picked up, and I think we'll have a good fourth quarter for venture investing. But the point is that there's still a lot of money. There's a lot of pent up demand. So if you have a great idea, remember differentiation in a huge market with a great team. Those are your three things you got to keep in mind. Startup valuations really depends on everything. It depends on industry. What industry are you in? It depends on what markets you're serving. How mature is your product? How awesome is your team? Where are you located? Lots of different factors. But I can tell you on the East Coast, just to give you a very rough idea, for a team of 3 or 4 full-time, pre-MVP, with some secret sauce, protected intellectual property, some proof of concept, which means you have some pilot projects going maybe, with some legitimate big clients, customers, you could probably get 3 to 5 million on a pre-money basis. And on the West Coast, just because everything is inflated, probably double that. On the A round, so that's for like a pre-A round valuation. So seed or a little bit after seed. And just for a startup, if you have, 2 guys in a garage with a great idea, you can probably value yourself, somewhere, I don't know, 1.5 to 3 million-ish, I'd say, depending on the depth of your experience of your team. So you can probably, raise $250,000, $500,000 and give up, very, very early, give up, say, 15 to 20% of the company for that. But I always tell people when they're super early, fund it yourself, because that dilution is very expensive. So looking at A round valuations, you have you have a minimum viable product, you have traction. So you have some customers, maybe you have 15 or 20 paying customers. If it's enterprise B2B SaaS, if it's consumer, let's say you have, you have a number of, a few thousand users, and you're showing demonstrable growth, and the product is working and customers are continuing to renew and your churn rate is low, then generally you can raise 5 to 10 million for A round. That's sort of the check sizes for A rounds, range. And you'd give up, say, 1/4 to 1/3 of your company. So 10 to 20 million pre-money for an A round with these conditions met. Depending on the industry, some industries like the biotech industries just throw these numbers away because those guys are getting crazy valuations off of just great technology. That's more of a hit or miss kind of business, but this is more for, let's say, an enterprise B2B software SaaS company. Okay, so let's talk about when to pivot, right? Pivoting is, I start by saying this is a very, very tough thing to do. How do you know, right, when to do it? We've all been taught, listen, stay focused, nose to the grindstone, never give up. And you take this course, right? And you're like, how long do I stay on this course without pivoting, right? So trying to figure out, do I stay on this course or do I pivot, change course? At what point, So it's also hard to read the landscape. Like, should I pivot? What, how should I pivot? How much of my business do I change? Do I make a wholesale change or a small incremental changes? And I got to tell you, the pivots that I've seen, and every company has pivoted many times. You name it, Amazon, Facebook, Google, Apple, all your top companies have all pivoted. So successful companies pivot, and it's a necessity. So let's get that out of the way. But I think a lot of it is luck, because I've seen companies pivot into something that wound up becoming huge. For example, HP pivoted into printers, became huge. McDonald's, the hamburger chain, pivoted into breakfast. They did it, like, you guys are too young for this, probably before you were born, but I remember when McDonald's was only open for lunch and dinner, and then they pivoted into breakfast, and voila, it's a third of their revenue now. So lots of success stories on pivoting, but I'll tell you, it is very hard. And I guess the second bullet is, when should you consider doing a pivot, right? And I would say, I have 3 bullets here. I say, you're working your butt off, you're trying really, really hard, and you can't seem to get much traction. So you have to dissect why, right? Is it because you're selling to the wrong people? Is it because you have the wrong salespeople? Is it because your sales approach is no good? Is it because your pricing doesn't work? It could be many, many reasons why you're not getting traction, right? So are you selling to the wrong buyer profile? So before you pivot, you have to try to figure out, why am I not making sales? Why am I not getting traction? What's not working? Also, another reason to pivot or think about it, when your customers are not 100% happy, that's definitely a sign. Because if your customer's 100% happy and you have a bunch of them, now you have the makings of a minimum viable product. You have product market fit if they're 100% happy. If they're 50% happy, that's not good enough. 80% happy, it's not good enough. Because someone else will do the 100, then you'll lose. So you have to make sure they're 100% happy. And you need a lot of people to be 100% happy. So if your customers are not 100% happy, you're going to have to tweak something in your business. And the third bullet, right? You have to constantly recreate the wheel over and over again. You're customizing things specifically to make a sale. Nothing is repeatable. You have a model that's not scalable, is what I'm saying. So if you don't have a model that's scalable, you best pivot quickly, because a scalable model is not a fundable model. Okay, no institutional investor will invest in it. It's also not a model that can get you a good exit. I'm not saying that non-scalable businesses are bad at all. I mean, law firms, accounting firms, consulting firms, they're all non-scalable, investment banking firms. But you need to, if you're building a technology company, you need to have something that's scalable. And in order to be scalable, you need things that are repeatable, processes, ways of doing business, ways of thinking. So if you have to constantly repeat yourself and with a different way and recreate the wheel, then it's time to consider a pivot. So how do you execute a good pivot? Not a God pivot, a good pivot. So my guidelines, my North Star has always been customers. Like, what do my customers want? What do they really want, and how can I give it to them? So I would be guided by the customers. I would let them tell me, what they need. And I would also be very close to my customers. I would talk to them nonstop and treat them like they're not just paying you, they're actually giving you advice to help you build a sustainable business and helping you build a scalable MVP product where you have, they're helping you get to product market fit. Once you get to product market fit, you can then just dump gasoline on the fire and grow like crazy. But until you get to product market fit, as an early stage company, right, you have to think about these things. So I would let the customer tell me, and really deeply try to figure out what pain point am I solving? I think I've mentioned before the difference between an aspirin and a vitamin. What are you selling? Are you selling an aspirin or are you selling a vitamin? Are you selling a must-have or a nice-to-have? You want to make sure you're selling an aspirin. So because a vitamin, you're not going to do well if you're selling a vitamin. So, you got to make sure you figure out a way to get to that aspirin for the customer. And that'll be your North Star. That's your guiding light, iterating and testing, critical, because you don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows. You don't know until you actually do it. You need to have, it's like an experiment in a laboratory. You need to experiment. So I'm a big fan of testing and constantly doing these micro changes and making sure that there's a feedback loop for information so you can figure out, was that good or bad? Was that a one-off or is that a pattern? And the key is to figure out what's a pattern. So having that pattern recognition skill is really important. And at the end of the day, every pivot, is an experiment at the beginning, right? So if a company wants to, pivot a product or pivot a geography. So I'm selling in North America. I want to start selling in Asia, or I want to start selling in Europe. Those are pivots. And you have to, make sure that you're getting the feedback so that you can make an informed decision. And even at the end of the day, go back to my third bullet under the yellow first bullet. A lot of this is luck, timing and luck, And then the last piece on executing a good pivot is that the process, right, is it really a series of micro pivots. It's not like one big pivot. It's a series of little pivots that get you there. So it's sort of like you're in a sailboat and you're sailing to this destination. So as you're sailing, you have to move and you're shifting constantly with the wind. But you decide to go to that destination. Well, you're still going to be shifting with the wind and pivoting and iterating as you get to that destination. So I say that's kind of an analogy to consider. I think, so being driven by your customer and being really close to your customer and in their head, and having this testing, iteration, incremental feedback kind of mentality is critical, because it's not a good idea to just pivot and just let's see what happens. No, it's pivot. Let's look at the data. Let's decide if this is good. Do we keep going? Do we make another micro pivot? Do we stop? That you have to look at it as a process, as a procedure, as opposed to just sort of winging it. So I'm happy to take questions on pivots after my talk, which is almost done. But let's see what else we got here. So exits. So yeah, Natalia asked me to talk about exits. So these are just considerations and thoughts, right? So reasons for selling, your reasons for selling. Why do you want to sell? First bullet, money. Okay, get it. Second bullet is something that's a little more interesting, which is, your company has hit a ceiling, and it's time to, the reason it's good to be part of a bigger organization is because now you can sell your product into other customer sets of the mothership and vice versa. So they might have customers, so they'll have customers for you, and your customers could actually buy some of their products. Operational and other synergies, sales organization synergies. Maybe your product fits in better. Maybe your product becomes part of a bigger solution set from a bigger organization. Maybe it's money. Company has, the buyer has good resources that they can throw at you and help you, build out your plan or build out your product. They have people, right? They have talent. So these are reasons that, a seller would want to sell. I sold my company. And why did I sell? Well, I did want to take money out, right? And my partners did as well. And my company was in an industry that was expanding geographically, and my footprint was only in North America. So how can I get into South America? How do I get into Asia? How do I get into Europe? I sold to a company that had 45 offices around the world, and they were able to sell our services around the world. And also some of their customers wound up being part of my company's offerings. In fact, when I sold my company, I was 80 million. The company now, it was bought by Xerox and they've done some spinoffs, but if you aggregate all the revenue, it's 2.5 to 3 billion in revenue now. So that means that they were able to sell their customers and new customers into our platform. So that was a really good win-win example. And then you look at, why do buyers buy, right? There's two types of buyers, essentially. You have financial buyers and strategic buyers. Financial buyers are sort of your private equity funds, your buyout shops, right? Carlyle, Blackstone, TPG. They buy companies, they fix them, they turn them around, they do some financial engineering, and then they flip them or they take them public, and that's how they get a return on investment for their partners. Your strategic buyers are your corporate buyers. Those are companies that are buying. So I sold my company to a strategic buyer. It was a Fortune 500 company. They were kind of a competitor of ours, but not really. They were more of a complementary company to what we were doing. So strategic buyers buy for different reasons. You know, they want to grow their business, obviously, because everyone wants to grow. So they may want to buy you because they want to add to their offering set. They may want your talent. You know, that's what an acqui-hire is. You see a lot of acqui-hires where companies are buying other companies and they really just want that brilliant talent, or the IP. You know, maybe they're buying patented products, stuff that's, you know, that's why you look at pharma, right? So why do the big drug companies buy the little drug companies? Because they have patents on this incredible IP, and they have this huge distribution network, and they're able to pump this new product into their massive distribution network. Customers. So, you know, strategic buyers may want to access your customers. You might have customers that they couldn't sell to for some reason. And then the third bullet here is talking about getting the best deal. So, you know, you want to get the best deal when you're doing a transaction, right? And you don't do this every day. You might do it once every 10 years, once every 20 years, or once in a lifetime. Whereas buyers, if they're a private equity shop, they're buying companies every month. If it's a strategic buyer, they're buying companies every quarter. So, you know, here you are trying to get the best deal for yourself, and you're going swimming with the sharks here, right? So to start, I think you have to understand what does the best deal mean for you? You know, how much money do you want? What do you want to do after you sell? Do you want to retire? Or you want to work part-time, or you want to work full-time for the organization? So you have to understand for yourself and for your people, what is it that you guys want to do? So before you do a deal, a sale, or an exit, you have to know what do you want? And think about it, you know, because this is life-changing stuff, right? If you're going to make a tremendous amount of money, it's going to change your life. If you're going to provide long-term sustainability for your, you know, management team, or for your 500 employees or 200 employees or whatever, that is big, big stuff. So you want to think about that, right? So you go into this process by knowing what you want and defining your outcome, and then you go from there. The second bullet is what I said earlier, you know, putting yourself in the shoes of somebody else, right? So if you can understand what the buyer wants and what you have that they want, then you can do a good thing for yourself. Example, why did I sell? Well, the company that bought me wanted a platform. They wanted a platform because they didn't have an infrastructure. They wanted customers. We had big customers, right? Microsoft, Merck. And they, most importantly, they have all these customers. They were a $5 billion company at the time, and we were 880 million. So much bigger than us. They had 50,000 employees. You know, we only had 2,000 employees. So, you know, they were motivated because they wanted to get into our sector. We were very, very niche oriented, right? We're a customer relationship management company, inbound customer care and tech support. We did it really, really well. And they felt that we could be a platform. So I knew that. And I had a great investment banker as well, which we'll talk about in a sec. But I knew that was what they wanted. And they wanted our people. They wanted our sort of, not myself and my CFO and my partner, but they wanted our front line of VPs and upper and middle management, because they didn't have that depth. So they wanted our customers, they wanted a platform. We didn't really have, we had some technology, but that wasn't why they were buying us. And they wanted to have our management team and our cash flow. We had good cash flow, and, you know, so by knowing their motivations, I was able to get a premium for our company beyond what our public company comps were trading at. So that's just a story. You know, I tell you that to get you thinking about when you're ready to sell. Make sure you understand what the other party wants that you have, and then you sell the heck out of that, right? So, and this is not just good for selling, it's good for raising money, it's good for hiring people. This kind of strategy, you know, basically it's just understanding, if you treat the buyer as a customer and you understand what they want, then you can be more successful because you're seeing things from their angle. And I referenced an investment banker. I think you have to hire a great investment banker and great service providers because they do this for a living. So great lawyers, great accountants, and great investment bankers are critical. They're expensive, but they will pay for themselves many, many times over because they do this for a living. They do multiple transactions every month. I mean, they do this for a living. This is their job. They know the market. They know the buyers in many cases, and they know the psychology of the buyers, which is priceless, right? They know how to structure deals. So if you can get this, you're building a dream team of people that will help you get your outcome. That's how you should look at it. So when you're building a dream team, you want to make sure you have the best you can get. So, and the good news is that it's temporary, right? You're going to hire them for the transaction, and then you don't have, continuing expenses, but they are expensive, but they will pay for themselves. Some resources, you can just take a screenshot of this. And by the way, my deck is available, so I sent it to Natalia, so you guys they can email you the deck, and you can have all this info. But these are some resources that you can check out, depending on your industry and what your interest is. And these are global, for the most part, resources that'll help you do your thing. My advice for you, pretty simple. If you want to be a successful entrepreneur, learn how to sell. So it's more important than learning how to code, because you can buy code. You can buy people to code. Yes, you can buy people to make sales, but if you don't know how to sell, you're at a huge disadvantage in life, as a parent, as a partner, as a subordinate, as a boss. So I'm a big fan of learning how to sell. And selling gets a bad rap. I'm not talking about, like your typical, the connotation of a salesperson is somebody who's really slick, dressed really well, fast talking, smooth talking. No, I'm talking about really understanding the science of selling and the art of selling as well. And influence, there's a book called Influence by Robert Cialdini, and that's a book that I would recommend. He talks about the 6 ways to influence people. And that's a really valuable book. It's got great knowledge, great information in it. Looking for true product market fit, right? So you want to match what you or your company is world-class with, match that with a huge pain point. So it's not good enough that it's a huge issue, a huge market, and it's not good enough that it's painful. It has to be both painful and huge. So my point about aspirins, where's your aspirin and what needs the aspirin, just to simplify it. And that's product market fit in a nutshell. You don't need to read the book. Developing awareness, I think, developing awareness and developing emotional control, those 2 bullets, I think those are the 2 most important traits to have to be a successful entrepreneur. You have to be self-aware and know what you say and do affects everyone around you, whether it's an internal or an external constituent. So having that awareness puts you at a gigantic advantage. It helps you with influence. It's my first bullet. These things all kind of tie together, right? Emotional control is important. You guys are entrepreneurs. Every day could be great. Every day could be terrible. It's a roller coaster. It's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. Even every hour could be up, down. And having the ability to temper your emotions is amazing. It's basically the essence of resilience, I think. Someone who's able to not let not get too excited when things are going great and not get too upset when things are going bad, and being able to be clear-headed and rational throughout the process, as rational as possible. I understand that this entrepreneurship thing is not easy at all. It's super hard, but being able to handle your emotions, you can relax better. And if you can relax, you can perform. And, you know, if you look at the great athletes of the world, the great boxers or Olympians, track stars, you know, none of them are ever performing. They can't perform well if they're tight, whether they're tight physically or tight mentally. They have to be relaxed. So you see the guys that are sprinting, you know, the 100-meter dash, when slow motion, their mouth, you can see their mouth going up and down, their lips, because they're relaxed. You can't really clench your jaw really hard and run fast. You just can't do it. Same thing with business. You know, you can't make good informed decisions and motivate your team if you are under huge amounts of stress that you can't control. So being able to control yourself, it all starts with you. That emotional control will allow you to be a better leader and think more clearly. And the last piece is have fun, because life is short. And if you're doing something you don't like doing, get out now, because life is short and there's no reason to stay in something that you're not loving. I know I'm really over time. So my next slide is we have two events. The event tomorrow is the biotech. You can see the Eventbrite link on there, and then CONNECTpreneur I gave you earlier. So my contact info is here, and I don't know if we have time for questions, but I'm game for that if you are. Thank you, guys.
Tien, how much time? Thank you so much. That was amazing. I felt like I just completed MBA.